guys. I'm here today with Kate. Kate is a really good friend of mine from uni. Kate's kind of the first person that I was able to freely talk about my mental health with, and she made me a lot more comfortable talking about my mental health, and also starting conversations with other people. I didn't really know how to do that, but Kate's kind of a mastermind at it, and that has been, talk to you about on your placements and stuff. Kate's also a physio, but I remember you saying one time that your supervisors were, really quite blown away at how well you can just ask someone about their mental health in a really respectful way and make that connection with them. So I'm going to talk to Kate about a few things today. What do you want to kick off with? Do you want to talk about your story a bit?
Maybe talking about mental health first.
Yep.
So I think for me the key to having successful conversations about mental health is being quite open about it and gentle. So not making a big deal out of it.
Yeah.
I think, so I will often ask patients, do you mind talking about how you're feeling emotionally? Do you have any concerns about what's happening or anything worrying you? And just opening that door to someone kind of gives them the feeling, oh, well, I'm not going to be judged for this conversation.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing about mental health is the stigma.
Yeah.
The stigma.
Massively.
Especially for men.
Yeah.
And it's often the male patients who open up to me the most.
Yeah. It's quite noisy where we are, sorry. But yeah. Which is kind of beautiful because it's so, I find it particularly hard to talk to men about their mental health. It's, they just don't open up as easily, I find.
Yes, for sure. And especially the more rural you go, the less likely they are to talk about it.
Yeah. So just to explain, we are near a bridge, but there's also this crazy crow that won't go away. It's in the background, but that's okay. So so just being really gentle and I suppose not making it weird, not making it a big deal.
Yeah.
I'll use an example here because I caught up with work very recently, and I sent them an email early in the week. I said, look, I just would like to touch base with you and let you know how I'm going with, I was having a lot of trouble with migraines. I was like, but I'm also having some trouble with my mental health, and I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page, so that if, I do have to take a sudden day off, it's not a shock. And I can remember going into her office and talking about these things, and she was very happy to talk about my migraines. And then she said to me, oh, and how are you going with your mental health? And she whispered it, just the last bit. So I was like, oh, how are you going with your mental health? And I was like, oh. I literally told you I wanted to talk about it. So don't make it weird, It's so...
For me, it's very important to normalize it, and I'm very open about my mental health.
And I think that's what made me, able to connect with you as well, was like, oh, it's not just me offloading and sounding like a crazy person. It's a mutual respect and discussion.
Yeah. And that understanding of even just being able to say to you, oh yeah, I go through that.
Yeah.
And making that empathetic connection.
Yeah.
Then they kind of go, oh, it's not just me.
Yeah.
I've had a lot of issues with mental health and placements.
Yes.
As you know.
We've been talking about,
yep. And it does come from that stigma of, well, I don't know about mental health, and that's too hard for me.
Yeah.
And
ignorance is our biggest downfall with mental health.
Yes.
1000%.
Yes. And especially when I'm so open to talk about it, I would rather someone ask me, hey, is that okay?
Yeah.
Or does that make sense to you? Or something like that, rather than just be like, oh well.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest thing, and I say it in almost every video, is if you don't understand, ask. I'm not going to get offended if you say, are you upset now? Are you just anxious? Or, is there something I can do? Or, hey, I don't understand what you're going through. Do you think you could explain that? Do you know what I mean? It's very important to kind of open that discussion up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it is getting easier, especially with things like Are You Okay Day.
Yeah.
But I think what people miss is that it's okay to not be okay.
Yeah.
So often on Are You Okay Day, instead of posting Are You Okay, I will post it's okay not to be okay.
Yeah.
Or if I ask someone, are you okay? And they're like, yeah, and I'm like, but really, are you okay?
Because it's so embedded in us to not burden other people. And I feel like we all think it is a burden to tell somebody, no, I'm not doing so good.
Yeah.
And that's
or
rubbish.
Embarrassing.
Yeah, embarrassing.
I think embarrassment and shame are a lot of things that hold people back from talking about mental health.
And that anxiety around judgment. Yeah. Yeah, I know that's one of my biggest things is judgment is my number one thing that will drive me to anxiety, and I've been talking about it with Kate at work, how I feel like I don't fit in Sydney, and I feel quite judged, and that just like sends my anxiety through the roof. And it might not be the case at all, but it's just how I feel in that moment.
Yeah. And anxiety is such a can I say bitch?
Yeah.
Anxiety is such a bitch.
It's a bitch.
It's very much like compounding in your own head. Oh, well, if I do that, then I'm going to be judged for it, and I don't want to be judged for it, so I won't do it. But if I don't do it, then I can't. And it's just that real snowball effect.
Yeah, it's your mind just takes one thought
Absolutely.
and rolls with it, and we've got very creative minds.
Yes.
They can say whatever they want to think, you know. So, it's something that. But starting conversation is number one, I think.
Yes, yeah, and being open to the reality.
Yeah.
Some people will ask what they don't really want to hear. And I think it's an energy that you give off of, no, I am open to listen to what you have to say.
Yeah.
I think that's really important to kind of put out there.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, so in the spirit of opening conversations, would you mind telling and talking a little bit about your mental health condition? Because I don't know much about your diagnosis. I really truly don't.
Yeah.
And it's something I've never asked you about either. I haven't asked you to talk about it. So
yeah. So mine is quite complicated. So backtracking. They say hindsight is 20/20.
Yeah.
I look back on my life and I can see anxiety things all the way through my
Yeah.
life. I was that kid who would take not only my uniform but a change of clothes to Mufti Day in case what I was wearing wasn't it, or there wasn't actually Mufti Day and I had just made it up. So I've been anxious pretty much my whole life. On top of that, I have 2 autoimmune conditions, and one of which is a chronic pain condition. So I have fibromyalgia. Side effects of both of those and a lot of autoimmune conditions is anxiety and depression. So that is kind of the underlying for me. That is what I'm treated as. When I first went to my doctor, it was second year for us.
Yep.
So 4 years ago?
Yep. 3, 4.
And I was very low. I had all the emotions. I've worn my emotionally exhausted t-shirt. It's very accurate. I had all the emotions, and all in one day. I could go happy, sad, angry, tired, anything you could think of, I was feeling it in a day.
Yeah.
And I went to him and I said, look, I've been feeling this. I often feel very down. I feel quite anxious about doing things. And he went, okay. And he ran me through the very basic mental health plan. Like, do you feel this? Do you feel this? Do you feel this?
Yep.
And he went, okay, here's a script. Off you go.
Yeah.
And that was it. So I started on a drug called Lexapro. And he said that there's an adjustment period with it. And I was like, okay. And this is all the information
I've talked about the adjustment period before.
Yes,
it's
yeah.
extreme when you go on
Yeah.
medications. It's really hard.
Yeah.
But without any further, at least I got told some signs and symptoms. You didn't.
No,
told
I got
anything.
told nothing. That was all the information I had. It was like, okay, well, you fit this mold. We're going to try this drug. Give it about 3 months and see how you feel. So 3 months is their magic number for
Medical trials.
so their adjustment period,
Yeah.
basically. And I was a zombie.
Mm-hmm.
I had no emotions. Nothing was sad, but nothing was funny. Nothing
Yeah.
felt good.
That numb feeling.
Very numb. And I remember I was with my ex at the time, and I was watching 13 Reasons Why.
Okay. Not helpful.
No. But I was watching it, and it was, if you haven't seen it, there's a suicide scene. He walked in as the suicide scene was on, and he's like, "How can you watch that?" And I was like, "Don't feel anything." And it was just,
Yeah.
I was just living day to day, like just routine.
Yeah. Just existing.
Yeah, exactly. So that was 6 months in to Lexapro. So I went back to my doctor. I said, "It's not working." And I'd like to point out at this stage, I had not been offered counselling. I had not been talked to about seeing a psychologist. It was just, here's the drug, off you go.
Yeah.
I switched to, he put me on Pristique, which is a different antidepressant, serotonin uptaker. And he put me on 50 milligrams, and he said, "Okay, wean off your Lexapro, wean onto this, off you go." And within the space of a week, I went from no emotions to all the emotions.
All of the everything.
I cried at everything.
Yeah.
It was,
And I just want to say, until you experience not being stable emotionally and mentally, it's really hard to understand. It's instability in those two things is the hardest thing to cope with.
yeah. Like, perfect example of just how irrational it is. Like, I cried because I didn't heat my food up too hot enough.
Yeah.
Like, just stupid things
Really,
that you're like,
yeah.
it doesn't matter. Just put it back in the microwave. I couldn't deal with that.
Yeah.
But
And
I was-
again, this is a chemical imbalance
Yeah.
causing this. It's nothing. Yeah.
yeah, and it's just your body interacting with this drug. So I was like, no, I have to give this drug 3 months to see how it kicks in with my body.
Yeah.
So that was 3 months of emotional exhaustion
Yeah.
and feeling all the emotions in one day.
Yeah.
I then ended up getting my drugs upped again, and then I leveled out for a bit, and then I got really anxious, and then I had to get them upped again.
Yeah.
So now I am on that 3rd dose. I'm much more level.
Yep.
I can think clearer.
Yep.
I still get all of my symptoms because that's just what it is.
Yep. And that's normal as well. Like, you don't want to completely get rid of, your feeling of nervousness or your ability to feel low or to feel high, because they're important parts of the human condition.
Yes, yeah.
Going back to high school.
Very, very much.
Very important
Very
and
much.
normal, but the extremes that you were experiencing are definitely not.
Yes. But the extremes are part of my mental health.
Yeah.
So when I went up to that 2nd dose of Pristique, I said, I need to see a psychologist. I need to get this sorted. I need to figure out what's going on in my head
Yep.
because I'm not coping.
Yeah.
And I was at uni. Our degree is quite stressful.
Our degree is very stressful.
Quite
Especially
intense.
our year group, we're incredibly competitive as well. Did
Yes.
you feel that?
Yes.
So there was a lot of pressure to do really, really well.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I had that my whole life of that. I have to be the best.
Yeah.
And
It's that perfectionist
yes.
ism. Yeah.
Yes, very
Yeah.
much.
It's something I've let go in the last couple of years, and people who've known me my whole life have kind of like, you're not going as hard as you normally would, or they'd expect me to go flat out at something, and I just kind of meander my way through it, and I think it shocks them, and it shocks me sometimes. Like, I had to do a presentation at work last week, and I was like, I really don't care about this, and I've never felt that in my entire life. I've been like, this has to be amazing, like I have to, show off to all of my new colleagues, and I was just like, yeah.
Yeah.
Whatever happens.
Exactly. That really kind of got kicked out of me in 2nd year
Yeah.
when I was first going through the med change,
Meds.
adjusting to meds, adjusting to different meds, adjusting to different meds,
Yeah.
going to psych.
Yeah.
So that the first psychologist I went to did not get along with. I want to say right now, if you go to a psychologist and you don't feel like you connect with them, go to a different
Yeah,
psychologist.
find someone else.
Yeah. It's not this is who you've been assigned to and that's it. No.
And
Find someone who works with you.
So I've seen quite a few because I was in the uni system to start with.
Yeah.
And every single person has a different approach.
Yes.
It's like you meet a different person down the street and they're a different personality. It's the same with psych. Everyone, you will never find a psych that does the same thing as somebody else.
Yeah. And that's their prerogative as health practitioners.
Yeah.
They're doing what they've learned and then studied on. That's fine. But even on a personality connection, you have to find someone you click with.
Yeah.
So my first psych, I saw 3 times. I wasn't feeling it. I went back to my doctor. I said, no, wrong one. I need someone else. And then I went to a different person, and me and him clicked straight away. And he was very easy to talk to. He validated that I wasn't crazy. Things were happening,
Yeah.
and they weren't in the realm of normal. And I said to him, I don't think it's just anxiety. I don't think it's just depression. I think there's more. And he said, okay, well, let me do this questionnaire. And we did a questionnaire for first bipolar disorder.
Yeah.
And he said, no, I don't think it's that. I think what you have is borderline personality disorder.
Which I had never heard of
Yeah.
until I started talking to Kate.
Yes. So it is actually quite common. I think, borderline personality and bipolar are often very similar and sometimes misdiagnosed.
Wait for the truck.
It's also referred to as emotional dysfunction,
Okay.
which I think is much more accurate of a term than
Okay.
personality disorder.
Yeah.
It's very different to multiple personality disorder.
Yep.
So it's not 6 different people in the one body.
Yep.
It's versions of me in the one body
Okay.
is how he described it. So I have an unofficial diagnosis.
Yeah.
So nowhere on paperwork does it say you have this.
Yep.
It is you have the potential to have this.
Yeah.
And the reasoning for that is the diagnostic criteria. There's 9 things in the spectrum, and you have to have 7 of them to have a definite diagnosis. I have 6.5.
6.5. What a good number.
Yeah. So I have 6 definite, and then I have 2 that fluctuate back and forth.
Right.
So he's like, unofficially, I would say that you have this, and I will treat you as if you have this.
Yeah.
But because you aren't hitting that magic 7,
Not allowed.
it's not on paper.
Yeah.
Yeah. But for me, having that it just helped things make sense. So symptoms or features of borderline personality is there are crossovers with bipolar. There's your emotional wave. Bipolar is much more of a slow up, hit the manic, come down, hit the depression.
Mm-hmm.
Mine is like sad, happy, fast. like it's seconds,
Yeah.
and it's for no reason. A big one, and one of the ones I feature, is irrational aggression.
Yeah. Okay.
So just getting angry really quickly for like stupid reasons.
Yeah.
If you've ever experienced road rage, it is like that fast, that angry, that frustration. But once it's kicked in, it's for like the whole day.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
And then the whole day I'm just like angry at everything.
Yep. And I think I've seen you maybe once
Oh
like
yeah,
that at uni.
I am sure.
And it would be like, there was a lot of really offensive things said in our lectures sometimes, and I think it would. I distinctly remember one day that there was something said in a lecture, and you were just like, triggered.
Or it is like shut my laptop.
Yeah. I'm out of
Not
here.
doing this.
Yeah.
Dissociation is a big one.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's kind of that spacey feeling, which I get brain fog anyway from my fibro.
Yep.
So it's that feeling of like it's harder to think of
So
what's happening.
Brain fog's the worst.
Brain fog is the worst, and if you've ever experienced brain fog, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
It's you can't you just can't function.
No,
And you forget things, and it's
yes.
oh.
And the memory has been a big issue for me. Short-term memory.
Yep.
Short-term recall. And then that feeling of like, well, I can't remember it, so I'm an idiot. Like,
Yeah.
Um.
And you second guess yourself.
Yes. Then there's your risk-taking behaviours. So for me, my risk-taking behaviours is irrational spending.
Okay.
So shopping, spending money I don't have
Okay.
to make me feel better.
Right.
It doesn't make you feel better. It just
Materialistic.
puts you into debt, and then you get more stressed.
Yeah.
Um,
For anyone thinking about taking it up during COVID.
yes, yeah. So that was something I had to learn to control. Especially when my partner first left, I was very much like, oh, I have to buy things.
Yeah.
It'll make me feel better.
Yeah.
It doesn't. Irrational spending, emotional eating, binge eating, which then plays into body dysmorphia.
Yeah, I binge eat. I've talked about that before in one of my dysmorphia vlogs. So Kate also suffers with body dysmorphia, and same as me, the binge eating is a thing. Yeah.
And emotional eating. Or, well, I'm sad, so I'll eat.
Yeah.
And then
And you never go and pick up an apple when you're sad.
No, it's always like,
I'll eat a block of chocolate.
I'll just have a couple chips. Oh, there's the bag.
Yeah.
Like, it's never just one thing, and then it's the guilt of oh, I ate so much.
Yeah. And like so, when I experience that guilt, then I like go and over exercise, and that makes me feel bad because I've like punished my body.
Yeah. Well, I have the opposite problem of I also have a thyroid condition, so I eat and then I gain weight really easily because my metabolism isn't functioning
Doesn't
properly.
work, yeah.
And then that plays into the body dysmorphia.
It's a big cycle.
It is. It's a big cycle.
And that's a lot to take in what do you know what I mean? Like,
yes.
It's all well and good for Kate to sit down and explain her story in 5 seconds, but this has been a massive
Yeah.
swing and
Years,
change,
years.
to your whole life.
I think my biggest trait, and anyone who knows me will be like, oh yeah, that's the thing, is personality reflection. So I will often feed off people's energy,
Yes.
which isn't always good.
No.
For me, particularly on placement at uni, if me and my educator didn't get along, if they didn't have a good energy, I didn't have a good energy, and then that would feed into my mood, and then my moods would change, and then my thinking would change. And I explained it to my educator, it's like sifting through filing cabinets that aren't alphabetized
Yeah.
to find my information.
Yeah.
But all the while there's just sirens going off in the background.
Yeah.
So it's really hard to think when you are in that kind of reflective patterning.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes sense.
It does. And like Kate is an over empathizer. If I was having a really crappy day and I was, eating lunch with Kate, and if she asked me how you going, and I go, no, I feel like crap, like it's just not it's not where I want to be, then like Kate, you take that on almost.
Instantly. Instantly.
Yeah.
And my mood will drop. It's happened all the time with my friend Steph. Steph has bipolar.
And it's one of the most beautiful people you'll ever meet.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, but
Absolutely.
again, you hear bipolar and you're like, oh, like,
Yeah.
but no, she's
No,
not at all.
And you wouldn't know unless she kind of told you,
or if you saw her in a manic phase.
or if you saw her in manic. But me and Steph would carpool a lot to uni, and I'd be fine. I'd be in a good mood, and she'd get in the car and she'd be down, and instantly I'd be down, and then the whole day I'm down and out.
Yeah.
It's quite hard.
It's really hard.
Yeah.
And so I suppose for you, do you then find it a bit more burdening when like you're around people with depression? Is that and is this because of the borderline personality? It is. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm an empath naturally.
Yeah.
So naturally I would sympathise with someone's emotions.
Yeah.
But because I have that personality reflection trait, I'm taking on their feelings.
Yeah.
And like it's like I'm trying to take it away.
Yeah.
So my psych explained it to me quite well as explaining the difference between borderline and multiple is he's like, it's just different versions of Kate. And he said he can see them come across the topics.
Whereas like multiple personality, you're a different person completely.
Completely different
it's like
person.
Dave, Carrie,
Yes.
Gina.
Yep.
Do you want to be like?
If you've ever seen Split,
Yeah. Okay.
that's multiple personality.
Yeah.
And so it is very much taking on people's problems. So it's quite hard. It's a hard thing to learn to not do it. I still do it. I still struggle with it.
Is that something that you do with your psychologist? And there's techniques for that?
Yep. Okay. So a lot of it is mindfulness.
Which you either love or hate, can I just put it out there? Mindfulness is hard.
I'm not a fan of mindfulness.
I struggle.
I struggle a lot, and it is that I can't turn my brain off feeling.
Yeah.
And I sit there and I'm like, be mindful, be mindful,
Be
be mindful.
mindful.
This is dumb.
This is
if it
dumb.
works for you, go for it.
Do it.
It doesn't work
Do it
for me.
well.
So I do CBT therapy, so cognitive behavioral therapy.
Yep.
And it's taking your thoughts, recognizing the thought, and then asking why you're thinking it.
Yes.
It's exhausting.
It's really hard. So I've done this also, and the way they start, I don't know if they did the same with you, the way they started me off was writing down my thoughts.
Journaling, yeah.
Yeah, so you'd like journal it, and you'd go, you'd do a percentage of how much you believed that thought. So like, for example, I'm really stupid, I can't get through today.
Yeah.
I believe that 85%.
Yeah.
And then I would be like, but if I said that to Kate, what would Kate say that I'm stupid and that she believes it?
I'd be like 0.
Yeah. and then you go, well, it's somebody, you reflect on it, you're like, what would, what's another option? Yeah. So, but it's really hard to do because you have to do this thought process, and it's okay when you're writing it down, but when it's in your head, you're like, ah.
And especially when you're trying to do a job, like our job.
Yeah.
You can't be like, hang on, I need to write this down and reflect on it.
You have to back yourself. Like, imagine going to a doctor or a physio and them going, and like just, you wouldn't feel, what's the right word?
Confident.
Yeah, you wouldn't feel confident in what they're telling you if they're not confident. Like, you need to have, as a healthcare worker, you back yourself or you fail. Do you know what I mean? Like, you fail your patients because they just won't believe what you're saying. So you have to be confident in whatever you're saying.
Yeah.
And
I've found that with patients. I will often say to my patient, like, especially on days I'm having brain fog where it's harder for me to think and think quickly, I will just say, sorry, I'm just thinking things through. Just give me a second. And I will talk it out. I'll be like, okay, so this is the problem. This is what we have. This is how we're going to fix it.
Yeah.
And actually talking to it is a distraction technique.
Yeah.
Another technique I've done mostly for my anxiety is grounding. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 grounding.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you've ever done that. Heard of that?
I do grounding, but I haven't heard of that technique.
So it's more about being present in the moment.
Yeah.
And it's a technique I learnt for dissociation. So I'll often have what I describe as space cadetting.
Yes, I like that. I use that word all the time at work. I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm just having a space cadet moment. They go, what? I'm so glad somebody else says that.
Mine is very much like, it's like my brain just shut off. Like there's like no one there.
Yeah.
So everyone does it a little bit differently, but basically it's about recognizing your surroundings. So it's 5 things you can hear, 4 things you can see, 3 things you can smell, 2 things you can feel, 1 thing you can taste, something like that. And it's just about bringing you into the present. Yeah. And I'm quite good now at being like, whoop, I wasn't there.
Yeah. I do very similar, but I don't do a number thing. I just close my eyes because my vision, like I'm visually impaired, so that's a problem for me. So I always just close my eyes, and it's what can I hear and what can I feel.
Yep.
So like if I will like tune into just the breeze on my skin, and that will ground me.
Yep. I'm quite good at doing it quickly now.
That's good.
So I don't need to count through, okay, what's the 5 things? I can just recognize, oh, I'm off, back to the concentration.
Yeah.
Which was quite helpful in lectures.
Yeah. And I can like on that, Kate saying that she's quick now. Don't be, don't feel sad if you like go to counselling and you're learning these strategies and they're taking you forever to do, because they take everyone forever to do to start with. Until you learn them and they become part of your daily norm.
Yeah.
They're so hard, but they're there, and you'll find the ones that click, and you'll find the ones that you go, that's rubbish, I can't do that, and that's okay as well.
So on that, grounding was the first technique I learned. I learned it in my first session. I had to do it multiple times a day because I was dissociating multiple times a day. So I was probably doing it 10 times a day, and it still took me a good year to get to the point where I was like, whoop, I'm back.
Yeah.
So what's that, like 3,000 times?
Yeah.
It took a long time.
It does. It takes
and
time.
A lot of practice.
And it's a skill. Like, you don't learn to play football really well in a year. You don't learn to play the piano like Mozart in a year. Like,
Yeah.
it's a skill. It takes time, and it should take time. That's okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing I've learned from my mental health journey is to be kind to yourself, to be gentle with yourself.
Yes.
You know, it's 1 in 3 people have mental health at some stage in their life, and it's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard and it's draining, and I think find what makes you happy, find your self-care things, and just give yourself permission to feel things.
Yeah. Don't bottle. Yeah.
Yeah, I think,
Don't fake it.
you know, if one day, if all you can do is breathe, you've still survived that day.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's only 24 hours in a bad day,
Yeah.
and you've survived 100% of your worst days.
Yeah.
And that's the things that I tell myself when I'm low.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's really good. Guys, that's a lot of information to take
It is,
in.
sorry.
No. Don't be. I really wanted to talk to Kate, and like, there's a fair chance that, you know, in the future we'll probably sit down again,
Yeah.
because I just think you're this world of knowledge, and I loved being able to talk to you, and I love being able to call you my friend. And I know that even if we don't talk for 6 months, if I text you, then you're there, and you know, and you're happy to talk about mental health with me, and that has been. It's been really good for me to have someone like that, because it's quite challenging actually to find people who are open and happy to talk about their mental health.
Yeah.
But if anyone has any questions whatsoever, feel free to shoot them through to me, or comment below, or do whatever you do on YouTube. I don't really know. And yeah, we'll get back to you as soon as we can. But thank you so much. Thank you so much for sitting
thanks for
down with
having
me. And I will talk to you guys soon. Thanks for watching. Yeah.